Good morning um, and good day to people in other time frames of the world. Today I'm going to discuss the elections in France and extreme rights, how they did in the elections in France. So, in order to understand the phenomena of the extreme right in France, we should look at its root causes, which I see in two elements. One is the crisis of the political system, with its inability to improve the standard of living and the security of the French people, and the loss of trust in leaders and in the dominant system. The other is a crisis of the alternative left, which is its ideological weakness. Uh, the French Communist Party was a major force for a long time in French politics, and ideology of Marxism and socialism were dominant in France. But with the demise of the Soviet Union and in general the decline of Marxism in the world, the ideological weakness of the left became very clear. So you have all kind of social movements trying to develop an alternative narrative in ecology, in decolonial movement. And the other thing is the political weakness of the decolonial movement. In France, it has grown in academia, but political parties are not based on a decolonial program. So that's the bigger picture. And if we look at the landscape of France, we look at extreme right, the extreme center, which I mean is the center which presents itself as moderate, but looking at the policy, I'm looking at Macron and others, in the global world arena, they are very extreme. They support most extremist groups in Ukraine and in Palestine. And then you have the white left, which is an amalgamation of all kind of political parties. And I'll talk to you about the decolonial movement in short. Now, the political system of France determines more or less how this correlation of forces will be manifested. You have the executive branch or legislative branch and the judicial branch. And the executive branch is exercised by the president and the government. The president is the executive head of state of France and commander-in-chief of the French armed forces. The prime minister is appointed by the president and is responsible to the parliament. And the parliament consists of the National Assembly, which is a lower house with 577 members, and the Senate, which is the upper house with 340 senators. Now, the president is elected by direct universal suffrage with a two-round system for a five-year mandate, and the National Assembly is also elected by direct universal suffrage, but with a two-round system by constituency, which is about 100,000 inhabitants per constituency for a five-year mandate. Now, how did the extreme right came about? It was founded in 1972, so I'm talking about 50 years ago, by Jean-Marie Le Pen, born in 1928. He founded the Front National, National Front, and in 1974 he got less than 1% of the votes. And Father Le Pen participated in the elections 16 years after the foundation. So in 1974 he had 1%. In 1988, when he participated in the presidential election, he got 40% in the first round, 50% in 1995 in the first round also, in 2002, 17%, in 2007, 11%. So what happened is that Le Pen, the father Le Pen, rose tremendously in the presidential elections, but saw his influence diminished because I think of his radical, extreme right ideas. But then the daughter, Marie Le Pen, took over, and she did very well by adding some moderate elements to its extreme right narrative. In the first round of the presidential elections, she got 18%. 2017, she got 21% in the first round, but she managed to go through the second round with 34% ending. In 2022, in the first round, 23%, but in the second round, 42%. Compare that to the father, who was at this height in 15%. So the party has grown enormously in electoral power. Now, if you look at the 577 seats of the National Assembly, Father Le Pen had 35 in 1986, 1988, in 1983, and 1997. It was one. So he was marginalized. In 2007, he didn't even got one seat. In 2012, the daughter Le Pen got two. 2017, 7. 2021, 81. And in the last election yesterday, she got 143. So the media is saying she lost the elections, but in fact, she has won. She has almost doubled her seats in the National Assembly, which is major. She might not have won absolute majority, as you know, she was hoping and people predicted. But nevertheless, her strength is enormous. She has grown enormously. If you look at her program, it's the daughter is wavering between extreme right and center right. Extreme right in anti-immigration, anti-Islam, and the creation of the climate of hate. Initially, the party was even anti-capitalist, now it's liberal and with protectionist policies. She's pro-welfare state. Climate change is not a priority. They profile themselves, as a feminist type of party, with 49% of candidates being female. She's against European Union, against NATO, pro-Israel, but then against NATO war in Ukraine. Now, the party of Macron, Renaissance, was founded in 2016 by Macron with candidates from the former Socialist and Republican parties. In the first round, in 2017, he got 24% of the votes. In the second round, 66%. In 2022, in the first round, 28%. In the second round, 59%. And in 2017, they had 308 seats. 2022, it dropped almost by half, 175. And yesterday, it further dropped to 163. So Macron is losing its influence. But then if you look at the party, it's extreme from the center. You have extreme right and you have extreme from the center, meaning pro-NATO, pro-war, against Russia in Ukraine, pro-Zionist, pro-capitalist, but very extreme in those defense, in the war against Russia and in the support for Zionism. They are very extreme. In the support for NATO, they are very extreme. But that policy of them led to crisis within France. You saw since 2020 a declining influence in Africa, with anti-colonial military coups taking place in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Gabon, leading French military to withdraw even from these countries. And the crisis of politics is that the war in Ukraine led to an economic crisis in France and Europe in general. And then it led in France to major protests in 2018 by the Yellow Vest against economic policies. The Yellow Vest is a mixture of right and left activists with different spokespersons, including a black woman, Priscilla Ludowski. She organized an online petition for lower taxes on essential goods, the implementation of the Citizens' Initiative referendum, lower pensions and lower salaries for senior officers and elected officials, and she got 1.2 million people signing her petition. So, but in economic terms, they are left. But regarding immigrants, they argue that people living in France means that they should become French, learning the French language, the history of France, civic education courses. So, and then there are mass demonstrations outside the trade unions. They have organized mass demonstrations, some ending in violence. But the trade unions used to be the vehicle for mass demonstrations for economic demands. And now Yellow Vest has taken over, showing the weakness of the trade unions. Now, let's go to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, which is the new white left in France. He was a left-wing member of the Socialist Party. Then he founded different parties in the course of the years. In 2009, he founded the Left Party. In 2016, he founded the French Unbought La France Insoumise Party, LFI. He participated in the presidential elections. In 2017, he got 20% in the first round, and 2022, he got 22% in the first round. And now, in the elections for the National Assembly, he managed to put together the new Popular Front Party coalition, in fact, which is a coalition of left-wing parties, including his LFI, and it was a coalition against Macron and Marine Le Pen. And they won 182 seats. The absolute majority required is 2,089, but they came out as the winner of the French election, which is important because it stopped the grab for power. It didn't stop the rise of the extreme right. In fact, the extreme right won the elections in terms of their growth, almost doubled. But the New Popular Front did very well in that the different parties became the largest coalition in parliament. Now, his program is basically France out of NATO. It's a critique of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They don't understand at all how NATO, was behind the provocation for the invasion. He did support Venezuela, but then denounces Iran as a theocracy that wants to destroy Israel and is in favor of a two-state solution in Palestine. So Mélenchon is a centrist, left, wavering, and the lack of ideological clarity is his weakness, and he will pay a price for this weakness, is my assessment. Now, if you look into the decolonial movement, which is mainly in academia and activism, but there's no political party that contests elections based on the decolonial program. Although there's an enormous potential for the decolonial movement because of the crisis of the political system. But then in the global north, we see the general weakness ideologically and politically of the decolonial movement, but it can only become stronger if it's combining its program and its activism and its ideological development with the movement for a multipolar world in the global south. It is a connection of the global south where you see a coalition growing, which is bringing about the end of the colonial world and the rise of a decolonial world. And I think taking the concept of social justice and trying to work with a progressive movement in France based on the unity of the left and anti-imperialism, decolonial movement can become a political power. Now, I gave an analysis of the background of the elections in UK, but I think it's also good to look at the elections in the UK. And my sister, Asu Mirali, a co-founder of the Decolonial International Network and board member of the foundation, made an analysis, an interesting analysis in three parts with the title Revolutionary Politics in the Time of Genocide Beyond the Fantasy of a Muslim Vote. So she explains in these articles how the political system of the UK works and what the experiences of the Muslim votes and how to look at the current elections and its outcome. Look at www.asumirali.com for these articles, which I highly recommend. You could download the PowerPoint at sandohira.com, and then if you want to support the channel, subscribe to it, share it with friends, family, and colleagues, encourage them to subscribe, get involved in discussion groups, and if you want to make a donation, go at sandohira.com to see how you can do that. Thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you next week.